Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We begin with Allah's blessed name. We praise Him and we glorify Him as He ought to be praised and glorified. And we pray for peace and for blessings on all His noble messengers, and in particular on the last of them all, the Blessed Prophet Muhammad sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. As we greet you once more from my sitting room here in my home, in my native island of Trinidad, with Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We thank my daughter who is once again doing the recording for me. It is today in Trinidad, the second day of Shawwal. For you, it might be the third. And so on this day, the second day, we would have recited Surah Al-Imran. If we want to khatam the Quran. Khatam the Quran means to recite the whole Quran. Khatam the Quran, to recite the whole Quran in one lunar month, because that is the Sunnah. And we have been in these rocking chair talks introducing Islamic eschatology, a new branch of knowledge. Previously, it is studied as the Kitab of Fitan in Hadith, and never studied as an independent branch of knowledge. I am doing no more than simply trying to build a foundation. And for others who will come after me, who will be far greater scholars than I am, and I pray for that with all my heart, that they will continue the construction of this house of knowledge of Islamic eschatology to dazzling heights, inshallah. I can then sleep peacefully in my grave if Allah so wills. My sins are forgiven, I can sleep peacefully in my grave. And we had reached to the, inshallah, and we had reached to the questions posed by the rabbis, and we never let rabbis forget that they ask these questions, which only a prophet can answer. And if he can answer these questions, then he, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, would indeed be a true prophet of the one God, the God of Abraham, Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. And one of the questions was asking about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land. And I am conscious that this subject could not have been understood, although it is treated in the Quran. It could not have been understood in the past until events had unfolded in history. And now that events have already unfolded, it is now possible for us to do what could not have been done before. And as a consequence, I am conscious that this is indeed new knowledge, and it is difficult for some people to absorb it. And so we have to be gentle with them, and we have to be patient with them, those whose hearts hunger for knowledge, those who have a love for the Quran, those who do not want to betray the Quran, and those who show respect for knowledge. And there are people like that, mashallah. And I'm happy to be a teacher, to teach the subject of the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land. What we've done so far is to point out, and I do it one more time, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered the question about the great traveler who traveled to the two ends of the land, he first repeated the question and then he answered it. And in repeating the question, he gave us the information that our great traveler was called Zulkarnain. And we have already explained that Zulkarnain means someone who possesses two curtains. And a curtain is a horn, or a curtain is a generation, a people, an epoch, an era, a time. And we have chosen, this is our way, others have chosen differently, but our way is to let the Quran answer the question, which meaning should we give to the word curtain? And whenever Allah has used the word qarn in the Quran, and the word qarn appears in the Quran several times. Every time Allah uses the word qarn in the Quran, He always uses the word qarn to mean an age, an epoch, a generation of people. But never, never, never has He used the word qarn to mean a horn. Excuse me. And so this is our choice. That we want to be faithful to the methodology of the Quran, the consistency of the Quran, and therefore we accept that Allah must have used the word qarn here to mean an age, an epoch, a time, rather than a horn. But if others choose to believe that the word qarn means a horn, and therefore they look for some historical personality who has two horns, that's their choice. We move on with our choice, and there's no need to send me emails to emphasize upon me that I'm wrong and you are right. No, I give you the freedom that you can make your choice. And let's leave us alone if you don't mind. And let us move forward with the meaning of Zulkarnain, being faithful to the Quran, is someone who impacts onto ages. And the Quran proceeds to tell us about the first age, the first time of the two times. And Zulkarnain is someone who has power, Allah's estimate power, and he has faith. And when power rests on the foundations of faith, what does power do? The first time, this is what power did. The second time, power will have to do the same thing when power rests on the foundations of faith. And we have not as yet attempted to explore the second time. We're still dealing with the first time. And when power rests on the foundations of faith, how will power be used? Zulkarnain traveled in the direction of the setting of the sun, and we have already identified, he reached a body of water which we've identified as the Black Sea. And we're not the only one. Ibn Kathir also identified it as the Black Sea. And there he met a people. And then Allah spoke to him. Allah spoke to him. Allah spoke to him the way Allah has spoken to his Anbiya. Ya Ibrahim, Ya Isa, Ya Dawood, Ya Zulkarnain. The same way, direct speech. The same way he spoke to these prophets of Allah, the same way he spoke directly, Ya Zulkarnain. And these were the words he then spoke to him. إِمَّا أَن تُعَذِّبَ وَإِمَّا أَن تَتَّخِذَ فِيهِمْ حُسْنًا. You can either do one of two things with your power. You can either punish them if they are wicked, or you can treat them nicely, gently. How does Zulkarnain respond when Allah spoke to him? And we pause here to remind you that if you say that Zulkarnain was this person or that person or that person in history, you will have to provide the evidence on Judgment Day that Allah spoke to him these words, and that he replied with these words. I wish you well, but I don't think you'll be able to provide the evidence. No, I don't think so. I think it would be better for you to go back and study the subject, and not to rush recklessly in identifying Zulkarnain with this person or that person or that person in history. He replied and says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ظَلَمَ فَسَوْفَ نُعَذِّبُهُ. Whosoever commits acts of zulm, wickedness, injustice, oppression, evil, I will punish him. وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَجَزَاؤُهُ وَأَمَّا مَنْ آمَنَ وَعَمِلَ صَالِحًا I can't remember now. All right. I will treat him nicely. Whoever has faith and who is righteous in his conduct, I will treat him nicely and reward him. This is how power was used in the region of the Black Sea on the first occasion. And so when power rests on the foundations of faith, power is used to punish the oppressor. Power is used to punish those who are wicked, those who tell monstrous lies to pursue their political agenda. And then power is also used to help and to assist and to reward those who have faith and who are righteous in their conduct. And so now we conclude that when the second current comes, this is our analysis, that when the second of the two currents come, then the world will see one more time in the region of the Black Sea power emerging and resting on the foundations of faith, and that the power will be used to punish the oppressor, and that power will be used to reward those who have faith and who are righteous in their conduct, and treat them nicely. And remember that Crimea commands the Black Sea. If you control Crimea, you control power in the Black Sea, in this modern age of weapons. So it is careful, necessary to keep your eyes pointed, focused on Crimea. And what has happened to Crimea in the last few hundred years, 1,000 years? First you had the Mongols who came, and they took control of Crimea. And then came the Ottoman Empire, following the Mongols to take control of Crimea. And all these years, power in Crimea was meant to control the Black Sea. Well, what is happening now? What we have noticed was in 2014, so 6 years ago, and we said it is time for Imran to celebrate when Russia, not the Soviet Union, not communist Russia, but a Russia which is returning to her Orthodox Christian foundations and heart. That Russia, it has not as yet completed that process of returning to its Orthodox Christian heart, but it is already in the process of doing so. And we recognize that. And we notice that by divine assistance, that's the only way I can perceive of it, Russia was able to recover Crimea without a shot being fired. Without a shot being fired. Despite all the efforts made to deny Crimea to Russia, including the Crimean War, which took place in 1852 to 1855. I told you I have a few books here on the Crimean War. They're somewhere here. I have read one or two of them already. So I know the subject of the Crimean War. And I would advise you to also study the Crimean War of 1852 to 1856, and also study what happened before that. You must study history, and not the history written by those who win the war, because they rewrite the history to support their views. You must read the history that is accurate. So critical study of history is very important for eschatology. And so now, when power is to once more be on the foundations of faith in the second current, power will manifest itself in the region of the Black Sea, and that power will be used to punish the oppressor. Bad news for the oppressor. And then we went to the rising of the sun in the opposite direction, and we said it has to be up to the Caspian Sea, because you can't go beyond that. So between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea is a very, very, very important geographical location for Akhir Zaman. This is why I have this in my heart. I want to travel from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea. And I'm already getting emails from those Sheikh. We want to go with you. We want to go with you. and the others advising me. Someone wrote to me from Baku, someone who is Azerbaijani, someone who is Armenian, writing to me and saying, we'll assist you in that journey, inshallah. So he traveled in the direction of the rising of the sun. And the rising of the sun is important for Akhir Zaman. The rising of the sun is one rising of the sun which comes from Allah. Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam says to the king, my Lord, my God causes the sun to rise from the east. Why don't you get it to rise from the west? Shall I repeat that? My God causes the sun to rise from the east. Why don't you try to get it to rise from the west? And this is what Dajjal has done. Dajjal has caused the sun to rise from the west. And it's, of course, a false sunrise. And this is my opinion. You can differ with me by all means. This is my opinion. And I want to have this recorded in my book that this is my opinion. Take this to the grave. The modern Western civilization has brought that false sunrise to the world. And so he's moving away. Power resting on the foundations of faith in the vicinity of in the area of the Black Sea will not move towards the false sunrise. It will move towards the true sunrise. And that's Russia's destiny. And as they move to the true sunrise, there at the Caspian Sea, where Azerbaijan is located, Armenia is located next to Azerbaijan, he found the people, and Allah says about them, لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا. A people who live the natural way of life. You can do what you want. You cannot brainwash these people into living an artificial way of life. That is what you have in the lands of the false sunrise. An artificial way of life where a man can marry another man and get a marriage certificate. But those who live the natural way of life, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُم مِّن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا, will live the way of life ordained by Allah, by nature. And that's a beautiful way of life. I used to say for many years, لَمْ نَجْعَلْ لَهُم مِّن دُونِهَا سِتْرًا implies a people who live a primitive way of life, but knowledge increases with time. You must allow the river of knowledge to flow at its own speed. You must allow the river of thought to flow at its own speed. And so I am now blessed with this new understanding, and I thank Allah for it, that He met a people who live the natural way of life. That natural way of life will survive. And so in this geography, from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea, there will be a people who, despite all the wars of oppression launched against them, all the efforts made to sabotage Akhir Zaman, they still remain a nice people. They still remain a people who live the natural way of life. That's Armenia, that's Azerbaijan. But there'll always be amongst them those who've been corrupted. And the ones who are corrupted usually are the ones who seize power and try to oppress the people. So Zulkarnain had the good sense, the wisdom, the compassion, the intelligence to allow them to continue to live the way they were living. And so when the second Qarn comes, when we travel to the direction of the rising of the sun, there by the Caspian Sea, you will once again find the nicest people of all. What a terrible thing it would be. What a terrible thing it would be for anyone to have hatred in their hearts for the Armenian people. How terrible it would be for anyone to have hatred in their hearts for the masses, the peasants of Azerbaijan, a nice people. Having made the journey to one end of the land, and then the journey to the other end of the land, the question was answered. What Allah knew, what the rabbis wanted. The question did not identify the target. The target was Gog and Magog. They wanted to know whether Nabi Muhammad knew about Gog and Magog. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now speaks about the third journey that the rabbis had not asked about. This is analysis. He now travels to a pass between the mountains. So you're looking for a range of mountains stretching from this sea to that sea, and in between is one solitary pass, and that is the Caucasus Mountains. And there at that pass, he finds a people, and they are people whose language could not be understood. Because their language was not related to the regional languages. And that's the Georgian language. Okay. And the people then said to him, surely Gog and Magog are committing acts of facade in this land. Facade is something that is evil. And that facade is a punishment for Allah for those who commit facade. So Gog and Magog have to be either angels or jinn or human beings. These are the only three categories of beings mentioned in the Quran. They can't be angels because angels do not commit any evil deeds. They cannot be jinn, and I'll tell you why soon. They have to be human beings. Gog and Magog are human beings. The others who choose to believe otherwise, leave them. Let's move ahead. And can you build a barrier to block this path, to protect us from Gog and Magog? So Gog and Magog are located on the other side of the mountain range. And Zulkarnain should have said, oh, but I don't need to build any barrier. Allah has given me power. And I have said that with that power I will punish those who commit acts of oppression and wickedness. So why then did he agree to build the barrier? Answer? The answer is located in the hadith in Sahih Muslim. It is a hadith al-Qudsi that Allah says, I have created creatures of mine so powerful that none but I can destroy them. So not even Zulkarnain has the power to destroy Gog and Magog. But he can check them, or they can checkmate them so that they are harmless. And that's what he did. The first time, he did it by building a barrier. And the barrier was built with blocks of iron and coated with copper. So you need iron ore. And there's a lot, an abundance of iron ore in that region where the Dariel Gorge is located. The Quran actually describes the shape of the gorge. It says, when he arrives to the Sadafain, Sadafain means two sides of a shell, Sadafain. So it has a shape like this. That's the same shape it has up to this day. So we know exactly the location. It's not by the Caspian Sea. It's here at the Dariel Gorge. So when he built this barrier, with blocks of iron coated with copper, Gog and Magog could not penetrate, nor could they scale the barrier. If Gog and Magog were jinn, they could pass through the barrier. But it's obvious they are neither angels nor they are jinn, they are human beings. This is analysis. But after he built the barrier, Gog and Magog were now contained and the world is safe. The world is safe. So now, when the second curtain comes, Are you listening? When the second current comes, the second time, that was the first one. When the second time, the second age comes, power in the region of the Black Sea will do the same thing. They will check Gog and Magog, so Gog and Magog can no longer enter into the world from that region to corrupt the world. So the world will be free from the oppression and the corruption of Gog and Magog. Now then, let me pause to explain one thing here, and it is critically important. Our Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, said that when Gog and Magog are released from behind that barrier, the first of them will pass by the Black Sea. Sorry, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem, because there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim which says that when they reach to Jerusalem, Nabi Isa alayhi salam will be there. Jesus will be there. And he will climb up a mountain. And the hadith of Sahih Muslim identifies that mountain and says, and it is a mountain in Baytul Maqdis. That is the hadith. So Gog and Magog are going to pass by the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem, Baytul Maqdis. And that's where they will perish, they will die. They will die, they will have their days ended in Jerusalem. But what is important, now we come back to this later, is that why would the last of them come? We know that when the barrier is removed, Allah breaks it down. Then the first of them will come. But why will the last of them come? The answer is, the last of them will come because Zulkarnain has blocked them a second time. The second of the two currents will do the same thing as the first of the two currents. On both occasions, Zulkarnain will block them. I don't know how he will block them. The first time was with a wall. I don't know how the second time will be, but this is what is going to happen in the second part. That is why he used the word the last of them all. Because there will be still Gog and Magog on that side of the barrier. But they cannot come. They cannot come to the second cut. They cannot come because Zulkarnain will block them. I'm saying this for the first time. I never said this before. And so now, having built the barrier, Zulkarnain then spoke. And he spoke words which only Allah could have given that knowledge to him. He said, هَذَا رَحْمَةٌ مِّن رَبِّي. This barrier which I have built, not a sad, a radam. Radam means like a dam. A dam. هَذَا رَحْمَةٌ مِّن رَبِّي. This is an act of kindness from my Rabb. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي جَعَلَهُ دَكَّاءَ وَكَانَ وَعْدُ رَبِّي حَقًّا. But when that time comes of which my Lord has won, my God has won, He is going to destroy this barrier, this radam, and the warning of my Lord will come to pass. These are the words spoken by Zulkarnain. I am not going to say, I am not going to go down that road to say that Zulkarnain, that Alexander spoke these words, or Cyrus spoke these words, or that Suleiman alayhi salam spoke these words. I am not going to go down that road. If that is your choice, that's your choice. Don't bother to send me emails to try to persuade me. No, I want to go to my grave with this. That I'm not going to identify Zulkarnain with any historical person. I want to go to the grave with this. I want it to be recorded on my book for Judgment Day that I refuse to identify Zulkarnain with any historical personality. Rather, it is first age and the second age. First time and the second. That is covenant. So when that barrier is broken, Allah brings it down. Then Gog and Magog are going to be released. And then what will happen in the world? It's going to be terrible in the world. And then we ask the question, this is where we stopped the last time from IBM. When will Allah bring down the barrier? And Gog and Magog will be released into the world. When? We have scholars in the world today, mashallah, who are intelligent and who have insight. And I pray that these words of mine may reach them, that they may study the subject and assess whether or not I am correct in my views. I do not want anyone to accept my views unless you are convinced that I am correct. This is the way my teacher trained me, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah, who was my daughter's grandfather. And so now, when will Gog and Magog be released? We've already quoted to you, Father, the hadith of Sahih Bukhari, where Nabi Muhammad ﷺ had that vision. And in the vision he saw that a hole had been made in the barrier. And he had the vision while sleeping, and he woke up with his face flushed red. And he spoke these words, وَيْلٌ لِلْعَرَبِ مِنْ شَرٍّ قَدْ اقْتَرَبَ. Woe unto the Arabs because of a great evil which is now approaching. It's close. It's close. The only way it can be close is if that hole in the barrier representing that Allah is now beginning the process of breaking down, destroying that barrier. This is analysis, and I'm sure that my viewing audience will be able to understand very easily that this vision was meant to inform our Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began the process of destroying the barrier in the lifetime of the Prophet, and this was conveyed to him in the vision. There was more to the vision, but we need not repeat that at this time. And so this is the first evidence we have from this hadith, that the barrier was broken down and the release of Gog and Magog commenced in the lifetime of the Prophet. So I hope that my viewing audience is convinced by this. But now we turn to the verse of the Quran. Two verses of the Quran. And it is in Surah Al-Anbiya. Surah Al-Anbiya of the Quran. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in these two verses. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وحرام على قرية أهلكناها أنهم لا يرجعون حتى إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج وهم من كل حدب ينسلون. Allah speaks of a town. He says that he destroyed the town. The people of the town were expelled from the town, and Allah placed a ban on them, that they could never return to reclaim that town as their own. Never never return to reclaim that town as their own. Abada. Except when? Except unless and until إذا فتحت يأجوج ومأجوج. Gog and Magog are released. فتحت, released. Ba'atha is to send. فتحت, released. And when they are released, they spread out in all directions. Now then, put on your thinking caps. These are people with power that none can destroy but Allah. And these are people who commit facade, oppression, injustice, evil. And so when they are released and they spread out all over the world is going to witness an age of terror, an age of unprecedented universal oppression. Are you thinking? And now let me say this, and this is critically important, that this event will occur only once in history. Not twice, not three times. Only once. That a people with power that none can stand in their way, they appear on the stage of the world for the first time, and they sweep away everything before them. Every civilization crumbles before them. A reign of terror, unprecedented power, but power resting on foundations that are essentially godless. When that happens, and they establish their world order of Gog and Magog, they will bring these people back to that land to reclaim it as their own. 2,000 years after they were expelled and a ban was placed upon them, they can never return. And we ask, has it occurred? Has it occurred? I am sure my listening audience is comprised of people who can think, whose minds can still function, and they would easily recognize that yes, this has already occurred. And this is the explanation of the wars of colonialism and imperialism that were unprecedented in history, in which one civilization swept the whole world and took control of the world with their unprecedented power. And it is modern Western civilization. My listening audience have the intelligence to be able to recognize it. It happened once in history. It never happened before. It won't happen again. So if you miss this, you're blind. And so Gog and Magog are there in Western civilization. Who are Gog and Magog? That is your question. Here is my answer. Who are those who brought the Jews back to the Holy Land? Previously they were called Banu Israel, but now they are no longer called Banu Israel. Now they're referred to as Al-Yahud in the Quran. They're no longer referred to as Banu Israel. Let them go to the Quran and ask why. I don't have to explain that to them. They're no longer referred to as Banu Israel, the Israelite people. That's gone. Now they're called Al-Yahud. And that portion who accepted the Messiah, now they are called Al-Nasara, the Christians. And these two together, a new term is coined, and they call Ahlul Kitab. And so who are those who brought the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own 2,000 years after they were expelled and Jerusalem was destroyed and the ban was placed on them that they could never return, except and until when Gog and Magog were released and they spread out all over the world with their indestructible power. No worldly power can destroy them. No worldly power can stand up to them. But they use power to oppress, to corrupt. Answer, it is modern Western civilization. And so my answer to you, of course, I know there'll still be some who cannot understand. What can I do? What can I do? How many times must I repeat it? That Gog and Magog are those who control power in modern Western civilization. They are the ones who brought the Jews back to the Holy Land, back to Jerusalem, to reclaim Jerusalem as their own. The hadith is that when Gog and Magog are released, the first of them will pass by the Sea of Galilee on their way to Jerusalem. I gave you the hadith of Sahih Muslim, Jerusalem. And by the time the last of them pass, they will say there used to be water here. And so the whole world knows, including the Jews, that the water level in the Sea of Galilee indicates how much time is there left in this last countdown. By the time the last of them pass, they'll say, there used to be water here. And so the destiny of the Sea of Galilee, no matter what you do, you can pump as much water as you want. The water could rise up suddenly if you want. But the destiny of the Sea of Galilee is that eventually it's going to run dry. And when that Sea of Galilee runs dry, that's goodbye to Israel, to Dajjal's state of Israel, not the holy state of Nabi Sulaiman, alayhi salam. When they reach to Jerusalem, Nabi Isa, Jesus, the true Messiah, would be there. Allah had already sent him back. Of course, the Ahmadiyya movement, with its intellectual arrogance and its misguidance, tries to impress upon the world, oh no, he's dead. He's dead, and he went to Kashmir, and he died, and he was buried in Kashmir. That load of rubbish. Intelligent people go to the Quran for knowledge, not to the Ahmadiyya movement. And so, I'm sorry to have to speak like this, but these people, they will not learn. No matter what you teach them, they will not learn. They will not learn to be faithful to the Quran. No matter how much I teach them, and I teach them, and I teach them, I can't shake them. But the people who are members of the Ahmadiyya movement are listening to me. And some of them are beginning to understand that they've been misled. So when Gog and Magog reached Jerusalem, Nabi Isa Islam would have come back, and he would have already killed Dajjal. So Dajjal gone, and now Gog and Magog arrived. And this is the last wave. Why is it the last? Why is it the last? Answer, it is the last because Zulkarnain has blocked them the second time. So no more can come. That's why it's the last. And Nabi Isa Islam climbs up the mountain in Jerusalem. And the hadith in Sahih Muslim, I'm repeating it to you. It says it is a mountain in Baytul Maqdis. That's the language in Sahih Muslim. A mountain in Jerusalem. And they're facing very difficult circumstances there on the mountain with the believers with him. And who are the believers who will be on the mountain with Nabi Isa? Would they be only the followers of Nabi Muhammad? No. None of the followers. They will be followers of Nabi Isa as well, who still follow him. You can't follow him and also follow this one. You either follow Nabi Isa Islam and you are in his ummah, or you follow Nabi Muhammad Islam and you are in his ummah. You can't have your foot in two camps. No. This is your Nabi, this is your Nabi. So amongst those who will go up the mountain, amongst those are those who are following him, who are his followers, who belong to his ummah. And there will also be those who follow Nabi Muhammad. And we are one fraternity. We don't hate each other. We don't fight with each other. We don't have hatred in our hearts for the Christians. That is wrong. Take it out of your hearts. Take it out of your hearts. You can have hatred in your hearts for others who are committing acts of wrong. But the people who are following Nabi Isa, following Jesus, and who are Christians who follow him. Christians, of course, is the term that was used after the Holy State collapsed. That was the term used. Not when the Holy State collapsed. When the effort to crucify Nabi Isa took place, and then Allah destroyed Jerusalem and expelled the Israelite people. Those of them who believed in him, that he was indeed the Messiah, those Israelites are now called Nazar. And those who rejected him, are you listening? Those who rejected him, no, he's a false Messiah. They are the ones who are now called Al-Yahud. You cannot deny that. Don't try. So Al-Yahud represents those who have rejected him. And Al-Nasara represents those who have accepted him. These are the two people. And they go up the mountain, and amongst them are those who follow Muhammad as well. And when they go up the mountain, then Nabi Isa will pray to Allah to destroy them, because only Allah can destroy them. And then and they are down at the bottom of the mountains, and they say, we've killed those who are on earth. Oh, they're doing this killing for the last 300-400 years. All over the world, they're killing people, slaughtering people. Millions and millions and millions have died because of them. But one day the chickens will come home to roost. Yes, one day the chickens will come home to roost. And that's when Allah will send something which attack them on the back of the neck, at the top of the spine. And they will all fall down, paralyzed. And by next morning they're all dead. And the oppressor will bite the dust. The same oppressor who is now oppressing Venezuela. The poor masses of Venezuela. A government which is trying to protect the rights of the poor in Venezuela. And that oppressor is oppressing them relentlessly to try to bring regime change to Venezuela. One day the chickens are come home to rest. To roost. And Allah will send something will attack them at the back of the necks. And they'll all fall down, paralyzed, implying that their immune system is gone and they have no means of resisting. But those who are living the natural way of life out there by the Caspian Sea, their immune system will not be damaged, no. And so when they die, by next morning their bodies are rotting. And then Nabi Isa comes down the mountain. Oh, I forgot. They said, we've killed those who are on earth. Now let us kill those who are in the sky above. And they send their arrows up into the sky. Probably military spacecraft circling the earth on top there. And they said, we want to kill those in the skies, but Allah will cause the arrows to come, maybe missiles, with blood on them, something red. And then Allah will send that something which will attack them at the back of the necks, the top of the spine, and they all fall down and die. And when they die, their body is decomposed by next morning, and Nabi Isa will come down the mountain. And he'll pray to Allah to get rid of them. And Allah will send prehistoric birds with necks like camels. And they will pick up these bodies and dump them wherever Allah chooses to dump them. And so Gog and Magog are going to end their days in Jerusalem. And so when Allah says, وَحَرَامٌ عَلَىٰ قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا, and we want to identify that town which Allah destroyed, it has to be a town which is linked with Gog and Magog. And only one town is linked with Gog and Magog, and that is Jerusalem. I hope that in this session I have been able to explain with clarity, with simplicity. I know there will still be people who cannot understand. And even if I repeat it 1,000 times, they still will not understand. So you'll have to forgive me. I don't know what I can do for them. I pray that Allah may bless you now. If you return to the Quran to study the subject of Gog and Magog, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam has explained the subject. The Quran has explained the subject. All that now remains is for you to study and to understand the subject. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.